What's up, Recovered on Purpose family? I am so stoked you're here for this week's episode of Guest Saturdays right here on the Recovered on Purpose show. Super excited about our guest today, Kevin Palmieri. Guys, you are in for a treat. Enjoy the show and keep living Recovered on Purpose.
The black represents the darkness from which we came. The white represents the light in which we now live. And the red represents the passion it takes to live Recovered on Purpose.
All right, family, I am super excited for the conversation we are having today with Kevin Palmieri. Kevin Palmieri is the CFO, founder, and co-host of Next Level University, a global top 100 self-improvement podcast with more than 1,000 episodes and over 600,000 listens in more than 125 countries. In his mid-20s, Kevin had it all: a beautiful girlfriend, high-paying job, sports car, and dream body. But he still ended up sitting on the edge of a bed contemplating suicide. Instead of continuing to fall into the depths of depression, Kevin decided to do something about it and go all in on holistic self-improvement, determined to overcome anxiety, depression, and to finally live the life he'd always dreamed of. Today, Kevin has built a multiple six-figure podcast reaching hundreds of thousands of people around the world, has given hundreds of speeches, trainings, and coaching calls with people all over the world. Kevin said the thing that changed wasn't outside, but, quote, the main thing that changed was me. Awesome. I love it. And Kevin, welcome to the show, brother. Thank you for being here.
I appreciate you having me. And after hearing the bio, I always think to myself, let's hope I don't screw this up. That's always my main focus, Adam. I appreciate you having me on, brother.
Man, I think it's beautiful that we're able to screw things up now.
Yeah.
You know, we actually have when we've overcome something like that, where we have contemplated suicide, where we've been in this dark place that we overcome. The listeners of this show, most of them have either recovered from addiction or alcoholism or are struggling to do that right now. So whatever comes out of this conversation, man, it's going to serve people. It's going to help people. So I appreciate you being here.
Of course. And that's the thing too, is I always try to show up as much as myself as I can. I went from rock bottom to where we are, but there were so many boundaries, there were roadblocks, there were crying sessions, there were happy sessions. So the journey from where you are to where you want to get it can be beautiful, but it's also a challenge. And I always want to talk openly about the upsides and the downsides.
Amen. And I love that. And I think that's kind of what life is. Something that I talk about is that, you know, addicts, people like me that have struggled with, you know, IV heroin addiction or these kinds of things that experience that depth of darkness. You know, we're able to appreciate this level of freedom, this level of happiness in a different way than people that have never experienced those depths, right?
Yeah.
So tell us about, you know, you had it all. In your bio, you talk about in your mid-20s, you had a beautiful girlfriend, you had the high-paying job, the dream body. You know, what was going on in your life that made you be sitting on a bed contemplating suicide?
Yeah. So when I was 25, I had all the things that Adam just said. I had everything you could want. Sports car. My girlfriend was a model. I had just done a bodybuilding show, so I was quite literally in the best shape of my life. Everything seemed awesome. But my girlfriend came to me one day, Adam, and this is just a representation of how scarce and how insecure I was at that point in my life. She came to me and said, Kev, I want to move across the country from the East Coast to California, and I want to chase my dreams. And I said no. And I gave her a list of reasons why that was a bad idea. Obviously, that was the end of that conversation. A couple of weeks go by and we're distant and I can tell something's wrong. And she comes to me one day and says, hey, I'm leaving. Not only am I going to go to California and chase my dreams, but I'm leaving you because you're not the supportive man that you were in the beginning of this relationship. And that was the right choice. She made the right decision 100%. And when that happened, everything got turned upside down. And now I'm thinking, well, who's going to love me? Am I broken? What's going on? Like, what happened? I didn't think this was going to happen this way. But the problem is I leaned more into external things to bring me happiness. So at the time, my job was in the weatherization industry. All that means is we work in buildings and make them more energy efficient. I worked for the state and oftentimes the government. So I got anywhere from $60 to $120 an hour doing this job, which was awesome. No college degree. Cool. I'm crushing it. Love it.
Yeah.
I wanted to make as much money as humanly possible that next year after we broke up because I thought that would fix my problems. So the year starts, I get promoted. So I'm a foreman now, which means I'm on the job from the very beginning to the very end. Awesome. Love it. And it was the busiest year we ever had. So if you fast forward to the end of the year, I had been on the road for 10 months out of the 12 months, every single week living in hotels because most of our work was on the road. But it was in alignment with what I was trying to do because I wanted to make as much money as possible. So I was standing at my kitchen table. I had my final pay stub in my hands, and I said, did I make $100,000 at 26 with no college degree? And I did. But it was very much the same thing where it looked like I should be really happy. It looked like I had all the results that anybody could ever want, but I was even more miserable, I think, because I assumed the money would fix the internal problems, and I hadn't learned the lesson yet, honestly. So in that moment, I realized that for most of my life, especially that year, I had lived unconsciously, just going through the motions, not really paying attention. The opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. So I started a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast. And in the beginning, it was just a passion project. I'm just talking to friends. And you know this, Adam, when you start something that's from a place of service and passion and purpose, you fall in love with it really quickly.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with this podcast right when I started it. And the job that brought me all of this money also now is starting to take away the opportunity for the podcast. And I didn't care about the money. I didn't want to travel. I was so burnt out. So I start calling out of work. I start showing up late. I start leaving the job site early. I just want to do my thing. I don't want to have to live this life on the road anymore. And it just kept getting worse. And I was burnt out and I was staying up for days on end. And it got to the point where I was in a hotel room in New Jersey, which is 6 hours from where I was living. My alarm clock went off at 5:15 in the morning, cold morning, sat up, slid to the edge of the bed, lacing up my work boots. And the best way to explain it is there's 10 televisions on in my head at the same time. Every single one was on a different station. One is saying, you're stuck here forever. You're never going to make this money again. If you do leave, what will your friends think? If you do leave, what will your family think? And if you do leave, do you really think you're going to go crush this podcast thing? And in that moment, I felt that if I was to take my life, I would take my problems with me. I'm very blessed because I have a very good business partner. One of the best men I've ever met. I'm so grateful. At the time, we were friends. I sent him a message. I told him how I was feeling. And he said, Kev, so much has changed with your self-awareness over the last few years, but your environments are all the same. I think you need to change your environment. So I ended up leaving that job 3 or 4 months later and beginning the journey of a very, very broke entrepreneur, doing what he loved from a place of purpose far earlier than profitability. And that was the beginning for me.
Yeah. And I remember one time in my recovery, and I appreciate you saying all that because it's not only a lesson that we have to learn, but it's a lesson I hope everybody out there that might not have experienced this yet takes this to heart, because I had this experience also. I was just under 2 years in my recovery. It was September of 2019, and I was making more money than I'd ever made, 6 figures, and had a business with 15 employees. It was going great. Had this new apartment downtown, a brand new motorcycle, car, everything. And then I had that feeling of, if this is what recovery is, if this is all it is, if I'm still feeling like this, I don't even want to be here. I wasn't having any problems really, but I felt like my life was meaningless again.
Yeah.
So that was actually what ended up birthing Recovered on Purpose, because I knew that chasing money and making money like that wasn't where it's at. It's not where it's at. So you also talked about, a supportive partner, and you have that in your partner now with business. What do you think the importance of finding someone to support you through things like that while you're having all those thoughts about what's going to happen if I do this? Do you think that people should just go ahead and do it, or do you think they should partner up with someone?
Yeah. So I think one thing, Alan, his name's Alan, I think what he gave me that day is he gave me permission. He gave me permission to actually do what I wanted to do. Where imagine, Adam, if I messaged somebody and said, hey, I'm having a crappy day at work. I'm having these dark thoughts about myself. I don't know. Number one, I don't know if I want to do this work thing or this life thing anymore. Imagine if somebody just messaged me back and said, Kev, nobody really likes their job. Just give it the weekend. I'm sure things will get better by Monday. Like, imagine if somebody gave me that advice. So I think you can do it on your own, but I do think it's very important that you really, really audit the people around you, because you have to think of this. The level of your relationships are directly correlated to the level of vulnerability in them. What do I mean by that? If you can't be authentically yourself to your circle, number one, it's going to be very hard for them to give you any advice, to give you aligned support, to give you any feedback. They're not going to know you at the deepest level. So I do think you can do this. You don't necessarily have to have a partner. You do have to have a community of people who want what's best for you regardless of yourself. And that starts with you saying, look, this is who I am. I am this, and this, or at least this is my current experience, right? Doesn't mean that that's who you are as a human. But yeah, if you can't be honest with people, it's going to be very hard to get powerful, aligned feedback. So you can do it alone in terms of the journey, but there will always be people around you that can support.
Amen. I love that. I love that. And I actually, someone got in my course, Recovery Speaker, this week, and I was super excited talking to her because she was at like a year and 10 months sober. She had been using for over 20 years. And during that time, she was able to keep a really good job, like in the finance industry with cars and things, and 6 figures, everything. And 4 weeks prior to our conversation, she made the decision, like, I'm not happy here. I need to go and figure out what actually makes me happy. And she left that cush job. She gave herself permission. And what I want to say to any of the listeners right now is this is the permission right now. Kevin and I, we're giving you this permission to do whatever it is that your dream is and go at it. And you're talking about, the people that you surround yourself with. And I actually just published an article in a addiction magazine. I call it Friendventory. And you are the sum average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I was like right around 6 months clean and sober. And I was sitting in this airport listening to Jim Rohn, drinking coffee, taking notes. And then he said that, and I'd heard it before, but the way he said it landed on me in a different way at that time. And I paused the video and I was like, if this is true, I should be able to quantify this, right? So I take out my notepad and I literally write down the 5 people I've spent the most time with in the last, month, 2 months. And then I wrote down the 3 thoughts that I associated with each of them the most, like the things we talk about the most, the things that, I think that they're thinking the most. Then the 3 feelings I associate with them, whether it was happy, joyous, or anxious, depressed, those kinds of things. And then I wrote down the monthly income I thought each of them made. And the crazy thing is, the 3 thoughts and feelings that showed up the most was what I was thinking about, what I was feeling the most. And then I took those 5 incomes, added them together, divided it by 5, and it was basically exactly what I was making. So how do you think people should find this environment, find these friendships, and, move forward in life? Should they be open to just cutting people off? How should they go about this?
Yeah, this is like the $1 billion question, because everybody has a different relationship with relationships. My advice might not land with everybody because I grew up without a dad, right? So I met my dad when I was 27. And I had the decision on, do I want this person to be my father figure or not? I decided no. And I know that's very hard, but for me, it was pretty easy because I was kind of desensitized to it. So I always tell people to start with this question, and very similar to Jim Rohn's question. Are the people in your life the best from your past or the best for your future? I love that question because it breaks the paradigm. It breaks the paradigm of, well, I've always known this person. That's fine. You might have gone to high school with these people. You didn't decide who you went to high school with. So ask yourself that question. What I always advise is you don't have to cut people out. You have to reallocate time. You have to reallocate time. If this person is not serving you, serving your mission, serving your purpose, to Adam's point, if this person is pulling you down, they're making you feel scarce, they're making you doubt yourself, they're poking fun at your goals, they don't deserve to hold space in your life. And oftentimes, we leave people in spaces that are blocking other people from filling that space. So if you reallocate time, I believe you will attract the right people into your life. Now, the only way that works, the only way you can find your people is if you are yourself. So you'll notice when you start posting positive quotes on Facebook, who likes it? Other people who post positive quotes. And that's you leaning into who you are. So yeah, I think that reallocate time and ask yourself this simple question. Where are the people that I would like to spend time with. Maybe they're at Barnes and Nobles. Maybe they're at the library, networking events, the gym, wherever that may be. And then you go put yourself in that position. You surround yourself in that environment, and you're more likely to attract that.
I love that so much. And what I love about these kinds of conversations is truth always shows up. And the way that truth shows up, because there is only one truth. Truth wouldn't exist if, the word truth wouldn't exist if there wasn't a truth. And you just explained something that I actually have in the relapse prevention worksheet that I made a couple weeks ago to give out for free. I say, the people in your past, the people in the fellowships and addicts and things, if you are identifying as an addict for the rest of your life and you only want to surround yourself with addicts and you only identify with people because you have this connected past, then you're going to stay there forever. Mm. And what's beautiful in recovery is that we can find hobbies. We can find, whether it's Barnes and Noble, or we may love playing basketball. I just started fighting again. And the people that I meet in there, we have this other thing in common, and no one else in there was a homeless heroin addict 5 years ago. So we're working on this other thing together. And you said to reallocate time, and there's different methods of doing that. And the way that I said to do it is basically, if you're, sometimes we feel lonely or bored, or we don't have something to do in our recovery. So maybe we'll just hit up that friend because, they'll be available to go get coffee or something. Mm. But what I say to do is, instead of doing that, instead of calling them to hang out, maybe call 5 people on your phone list that feel the way you want to feel, that think the way you want to think, and that, have things that you might want to have, and just ask them how their day's going. Try to find out how they think. How would you tell the listeners to reallocate time? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, to me, it means questioning why everything currently is the way it is. And this is the other thing too. I like questions, Adam. Obviously, I like a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Have you actually made the commitment to the friendships and the relationships that people think you have? Somebody said that to me the other day in a podcast. They said, well, you're committed to your family and your friends. And I said, what do you mean? I'm committed to what I decide to be committed to. Just because people think I should be doesn't mean that's my cause. So I think you really have to, number one, say, how committed am I actually to these relationships and the results they're bringing me? And I think another thing to think about is, to your point, you and I are very much on the same wavelength with this. What is the intention I am trying to accomplish by reaching out to this person when you're reaching out to somebody? When you're reallocating time, I really think it's about you setting boundaries. It's about you resetting a relationship by saying, look, this is my new truth. And it could be subconscious, it could be unconscious, or it could be a message. You saying, hey, I'm going to work on myself more than I have in the past. So please don't be offended if I don't answer your messages as quickly. Yeah. Something that simple, where it's just a heads up. I'm going through some stuff that I'm trying to work on. I might not be as responsive. Will you get some hate for that? Probably. Will you get some people that will look at you differently and respect you based on your boundaries? Absolutely. So I really think it's giving whatever version of the truth the relationship deserves. I believe that's probably the best way to reallocate time.
Amen. I love that. What are the top 3 qualities that you look for in somebody that you're going to spend time with?
Number 1 is humility. I value humility over everything because I cannot stand ego. I run from it. I can't do it. So yeah, humility is 1. I love humor. I love making people laugh and laughing and not having to be serious all the time. And I would say the third one is probably kindness. One of the things that I really, really value in my wife is she is just the kindest human. She is kind to everybody, no matter what. And it's just, it raises my vibration. It makes me warm inside. It makes me happy. So those are 3. A big one, I think, too, is I really want to surround myself with people who want to see me win regardless of them. And that's a hard quality to find. Yeah. But my business partner is that type of person. He doesn't care if I win without him. He just wants to see me win. And that's something that I've really learned the rarity of, but also the value of because of the rarity.
What does that look like? What does that look like in comparison to most people when someone is down for you to win without them?
Yeah, it's one of those, the analogies I use for that is when I come on a show like this, any show, if you ask me a question, I'm not going to hold back on my answer and say, I don't want to give it all away. I want to give all of it away. There's no reason for me to hold on to it because, and this is the interesting thing, I believe I'm going to win regardless. because I know I'm just going to keep working. So I think that the difference is it's very hard for somebody to want you to win regardless of them if they don't think they can win on their own. It's very challenging to give what you do not have. If I'm not confident that I can succeed, Adam, I don't want you to succeed. What if you leave me behind? What if you make me look bad? What if you are a mirror from my lack of success? So yeah, I think it looks like somebody who believes in themselves and somebody who, I think there's three types of people. There's people who want to see you win. There's people who don't want to see you win. And there's people who don't care. They're just kind of in between. I think you want to find the most people who want to see you win. And the confident people who are really confident in themselves, I believe will want you to win regardless of them because they believe they're going to win too subconsciously.
Amen. And I actually love the first two people that you stated, the people that want you to win and the people that don't want you to win. And I'm working on this psychic change right now of not being motivated by haters, not being motivated by naysayers, but for some reason, it still just motivates me, bro. When someone just doesn't think I can do something.
Same.
You know, before writing my book and publishing my book, you know, I was releasing my story, and my story has a lot of things in it that, you know, some people might have thought different things about, right? Like I even had a family member who told me I shouldn't put those stories out. You know, I had people in, you know, different fellowships and things, you know, they didn't believe that I was actually going to publish a book. And while that was happening, I stopped telling everybody. You know, I stopped telling anybody I was doing it, and I sat down and focused for 5 weeks, wrote and published the book. And in that time, you know, I found during that time, the people that reached out and encouraged me, right? Those people are still in my life today.
Yeah.
And then the people that were doubting or, you know, telling me, you know, not the family member, and it completely changed after the book published because they saw like how much impact it had. They saw the truth of my stories and things like that. But in that time, I really realized who is for me and who is against me. And the people that were for me when I was first starting this, when I was first going at this thing, they're still in my life today. So what do you think about, and that just kind of gave me an idea, what do you think about somebody making a decision to make a change in their life, doing something different right now, and watching the reactions from the people around them?
Yeah, we just talked about this recently where this is what I think happens. I think that somebody has you in an identity box. And that identity box is the way you've always been. One of two things happens. You start to do something new and you say, this is my new identity. People are extremely attracted to it or they are extremely against it. The reason is they cannot see you yet as that person. Or they cannot see themselves as that version of that person. Therefore, they can't understand how you could do it. So, Adam, to your point before, I definitely have a small part of me that is like, okay, just watch me win then. That's fine. Like you do you, watch me win. One thing I've really started to understand, and I'm curious to your take on this, I wouldn't have liked myself 5 years ago at this point, because 5 years ago, I was so scarce. Confidence was intimidating to me. I don't think I would have looked at this version of Kevin and said, wow, what a good dude. I think I would have looked at him and said, yeah, he's kind of arrogant. That helps me empathize with people who don't believe, because I might not have either. I might not have liked myself, which is hard to say, but I'm curious if you've ever looked at it from that perspective.
You know, and I love that you brought that question up, because I had a very different experience, especially in my addiction, because I knew what was holding me back. I knew the thing that was taking everything from me, you know, and I actually would watch speakers. I would go to conferences, you know, I would shoot up on break, you know, and stay in there. And a few different times when I was struggling the most, and I watched like a viral TED Talk, you know, there's one that's famous. Everything you think you know about addiction is wrong. Johan Ari. And after I watched that, it was 2015 or 16 that I watched it. I found his contact and reached out to him. And I told him where I'm at. I told him my story and everything, like in a short email, respectful email. And he emailed me back, you know, and just that email back was so helpful to me. It just made me feel like I had value, you know, even though I was struggling with this addiction and everything, you know, I still knew that people cared. And now in my recovery and having my page and followers and things like that, I reply to every single message. And when comments come on of hate, I actually reply in nothing but love, because I've come to understand so many people's different perspectives and experiences and things like that, that there's nothing that I could say to defend myself that would make the situation better for that person.
Right.
And if someone is projecting something on the situation, and I receive love with it, I just give them back love, and I just try to understand what's going on with them. How could that change their life? Maybe that would impact them. Yeah. So I don't really remember. Oh yeah. The question basically, if I would hate myself now, I would look up to myself now. And I look up to myself 5 years from now. I want to help people so bad. And, leaders out there that are helping people, that are truly kind, like Gary V and these kinds of people that just love people, inspire me so much. Just inspire me so much, man.
It's powerful.
Yeah. So what do you think? What do you think about, I talk about intentional relationships, right? And we've been having this conversation. And do you have any specific habits of getting new relationships, getting new connections, getting new networks and things like that? Or how do you actually connect with new people?
Yeah, I'm definitely a weirdo, Adam. For me, I have 3 or 4 friends, and that's it for me. That's all I need. That's all I want. I'm an introvert. It might not come off that way because I do so many podcasts, but for me, I like being alone. And I only like surrounding myself with people who believe in me, themselves, and what they're doing. I really think that's one of the ways that I've grown so quickly is I've been surrounded by people who are amplifiers, not people who are holding me back. So I think that if you are looking to meet more people and make more friends and have more relationships, ask yourself a simple question. What value do I bring to this relationship?
Yes.
That's a great question to ask, because too many people aren't. A lot of people are just saying, what's in it for me? If I get around Adam, I can get this. Not, what can I bring to Adam's life that will help him help more people? If you fit into somebody's mission, they're more likely to spend time with you. That's an interesting thing, that we take relationships very personally, and we should. But you have to understand that if you're in alignment with somebody's end goal, they will spend more time with you. It just is the way it works. So you have to figure out what's in it for them as much as what's in it for you. That's what I would say. And obviously I'm a podcaster, so I meet a lot of people. That's part of it. But I think it really is showing up as your authentic self. Will everybody get along with that? Not necessarily, but the right people will, for sure.
Exactly. Yes. And I love that. And just because this just came up, I'm going to do a shameless plug. We just had a board meeting a few days ago for Recovered on Purpose nonprofit. And guys, if there's anyone out there that wants to talk about possibly volunteering with some different things that they have skills at, I would love to have a conversation. We are currently looking for volunteers to help get this message out, help addicts in recovery share their stories. So love you guys. We're going to take a quick 30-second break. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about peak performance habits and how you can change your life with the way that you live. Love you guys. See you in a minute. What's up, Recovered on Purpose family? I hope you're enjoying this episode as much as I do when I'm making them. Guys, if you're getting any value from this, if you're seeing any golden nuggets that you want to share with your community, make sure that you are. You're sharing it with your groups, you're sharing it with your personal page or your pages, or to that one person that you're thinking of right now in their messengers so that they get this message. And guys, the brand new Recovered on Purpose website is up, and it has a whole bunch of different merchandise and resources and the free calls with me. So make sure you're checking out recoveredonpurpose.com after the show. And if you are a loved one of an addict, if you have a kid that's suffering an addiction, I'm now doing free calls so that we can strategize and find out how we can get them clean and keep them clean. Love you guys so much, and enjoy the rest of the show. Amen. Amen. And guys, on that website also is the free relapse prevention worksheet. There have been a ton of downloads. I know that a lot of people have wanted something like this. So go to the website, check out all the resources. Everything is free there. So enjoy. So Kevin, I want to talk about habits and routines that you have, implemented into your life that have gotten you from on the bed, contemplating suicide to where you're at now.
Yeah, I think the number one, and it's going to sound so simple, and again, Jim Rohn, this is like Jim Rohn in a nutshell, but Amen. I learn something every day. For the longest time, Adam, I really thought that success was this I don't know, this thing that was hidden and I would never find. And the more I worked on myself, the more I started to understand that, like, I just needed to raise my own self-awareness and the awareness of everything around me. The biggest thing, the best habit I have is I learn for at least a half hour a day. That is the most impactful thing I have done over the last 5 years. That is huge. I also, one thing that's big for me is I track my finances every day and the business finances every single day. So we break our lives up into health, wealth, and love. So under health, I weigh myself and I track my calories every day. Simple, two simple things. Under wealth, I track my finances and I try to eliminate all non-essential expenditures every day. I'm always conscious of what I'm spending. And then under love, my wife and I have what we call the gratitude game. Every night before we go to bed, we say a couple things that we're grateful for about each other. And that simple habit that takes 30 seconds can prevent so many arguments, so many lack of understandings, misalignments. So those are a few simple ones that I think if you can just start small with those, you can always build. The habits that I believe are the best in the beginning are the ones that are most sustainable. Yeah. And I don't think a lot of people are pushing that. They're saying, well, do this, do this, do this. I would just do the simplest version of the simplest thing you can do to get started.
Yeah. Yeah, and they talk about it in Atomic Habits.
Yes.
The keystone habit. And my keystone habit, I started on day 1 of sobriety when I finally got into a sober living house. Made my bed every single day. And I may have missed like 3 or 4 days in my total recovery just because something else was going on that I didn't make my bed. Yeah. But every single day making my bed has made it so that, I'm thinking about, doing something for my environment to get it good. Yeah. So what kind of learning do you do for 30 minutes a day? Is it different methods, or how would you suggest somebody take this on in their life?
Yeah, I always try to do like a specialized learning in the beginning. So what is the thing that you feel you need to learn the most? For a while for me, I was learning about sales. I was learning about spirituality, economics, numbers and math. So it really, I think the best thing for somebody early on is probably self-awareness. There's a great book called Mindset by Carol Dweck. There's another great book called The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. Those are books that are going to help you understand yourself at a deeper level. I think that what happens is we go out and learn all this stuff. We learn all this information. The problem is it's not getting to the root of who we are, because there's so many limiting beliefs and behaviors that aren't necessarily ours that you have to uncondition. So I think unlearning through self-awareness is just as important as learning new stuff, from out in the world.
Amen. I love that so much. And I think that, a lot of people that, had the addiction past, right? Because that's who this audience is. We were addicts, right? And we created so many bad habits in our addiction. We think that the bad habit was, using drugs. But in order to use drugs, we had to do so many other things. We had to think so many different things about ourselves. And if we bring that into recovery, we have to start realizing, what we have brought from the past that we can take out, right? Yeah. So that question, what do you need to learn? What do you want to learn most? Anybody out there that has something that they want to do, do it. Like we're saying, 30 minutes a day could absolutely change your life. I'm constantly doing this also. A decision that I made recently is that, I have a bucket list item. When I was 18, 19, 20 years old, I was training MMA. And I had my first card. I had my first amateur fight scheduled. I was training hard for it. And then my best friend killed himself, and I went deeper into addiction. And shortly thereafter, on my way to training, I had my first overdose. And then I just never went back. I just figured that the drugs were taking me. And I made the decision that I'm actually going to fulfill this bucket list item. And I'm training every single day right now. I'm going to find a fight down here in Colombia. I've always wanted to compete. I've always wanted to do this thing. And it's just a decision that I made. And guys, whatever it is that you want to do, whatever it is, it'll bring fulfillment to your life. Yes, work your 9 to 5 right now. Yes, do whatever you got to do. But even 30 minutes to yourself of learning something that will be a skill for your career, or a skill for, something that you want to do just for passion, it's so beneficial. What do you think that you have gained internally from that habit of 30 minutes a day, every day of learning?
I would say a very, very, very deep level of self-awareness. So here's the thing, right? Imagine if during even if you watched one TED Talk, 15 minutes, 12 minutes, whatever it is, 18 minutes. Imagine if you watched one of those and you got to the end of that and you said, okay, how do I react when I get insecure? Just imagine that was what the TED Talk was about. And you get to the point where you realize, oh, when I get insecure, I shut down or I villainize the person who's making me feel insecure. Imagine if you had that one new awareness, how much your life shifts. Every time you go into a conversation, Adam, I'll be very honest. To me, you're somewhat intimidating, right? You're a good-looking man. You train martial arts. I train martial arts. I'm usually the one who trains martial arts in the conversations. You're definitely probably bigger than I. I'm usually the jacked one in the conversations, right? So I could very easily get insecure and say, Adam's arrogant. He's not my type of person. I'm very aware to the point where I realize that in real time, like that could be happening, and then I correct it. But that all came from me understanding myself at a deep level. So when you understand yourself at a deep level, everything else starts to make a little bit more sense, and you can start to see, oh, I am accepting this level of relationship because I have low self-worth and I don't think I deserve more. Oh, I'm not going for these things in my life because I'm so afraid that if I succeed at a high level, I'll leave all my friends behind. What does that mean? I think self-awareness, hyper-consciousness, that's why I started the podcast. Hyper-consciousness, I think, is the way to success, because when you understand yourself, you can understand everything at a deeper level. So yeah, I would say that. Every time I learn something new, I question, what does this mean for me? Because it might not mean the same thing for Adam. It might not mean the same thing for me if you're listening. But what does it mean for me? And another question I always ask myself is why? Why do I feel this way? Why am I making this decision? This decision? Why am I not making this decision? If you ask yourself why, it's going to force you to dig below the surface layer.
I love that. I love that so much. And just so you know, I could be insecure about your podcast situation, right? You're killing it the way that you talk. You've done thousands of episodes, other people's podcasts and everything. I've done a lot, but obviously I'm trying to do more and more and more and more, right? And I think the perspective for me in a conversation like this, right, is I want to be around people that are doing things better than me that I want to do. You know, and I learned this, I was probably like 12 to 15 months sober. And I had, early on in my recovery, I had started lifting because I wanted my body back, And this one day I'm at the gym and I'm in Billings, Montana at Yellowstone Fitness. And I'm like doing these dumbbell bench presses, right? And I've got 70s and I'm pushing them up and I'm all like, yeah, I'm so strong, in my head, because I'm telling myself that. And this dude gets right next to me. He's probably about the same weight as me. And he picks up 135s and he lays down and he just starts pushing them up. And I was like, okay, if this guy can do that, why can't I? And I told myself in my head, the next time I come back here, I'm going to do 135s. And that same day, I put the 70s down and I picked up 90s. I was like, why not? Why wouldn't I try this? And then I was able to do them, because we have this, David Goggins calls it like the governor, right? The governor on a car where, it says we can go to 130, but right when we hit that 91 governor, the car starts to, and it won't let us go past that. And if we have this governor in our mind telling us we can't go that far, or we can't achieve what that person's achieving, then we'll start getting that insecurity. Then we'll start being like, hating on that person or whatever. And if you guys out there listening, if you have that perspective where you're talking with someone that is, that's doing big things and it makes you feel a certain way, seek that, look into that, journal about that, do some inventory on that, find out where that's coming from so we can get rid of that. Because you want to surround yourself with people that are doing good things. For sure. You'll always get better, right?
I was in the gym, Adam, similar to you. I saw this guy, and again, this is like the awareness piece. This guy is in unreasonable, like just a stud, great looking guy in just such good shape. Nobody ever tells him that. Nobody will ever go up to that man in the gym and be like, you are absolutely crushing it, unless they have the confidence to do it. And I said to myself, I'm going to go talk to that person and I'm going to give them a compliment because I'm inspired by that person. So I walk up to this person. I said, hey, you're crushing it. Like, you are absolutely crushing it. Like, good for you. And he's like, thanks, man. I appreciate that very much. And I was like, you don't get that very often, huh? He's like, no, I think a lot of people think I'm like kind of mean or angry. He's like, I'm a nice guy. And I was like, well, it was a pleasure to meet you. I just want to let you know that I'm inspired by you. But again, you know, in the very beginning of my journey, when I was the little kid in the gym, I probably would have been afraid of that. So the next time that you have that, to Adam's point, ask yourself why. And then maybe you'll get to the point where you can say, you know what? I'm just going to say hi to that person. Or I'm going to give that person a compliment. Or I'm going to say they inspire me. I bet you it goes better than you think it will.
Yeah, 100%. That was what happened. Like I was talking about earlier, when I started reaching out to these people that inspired me.
Yeah.
They, you know, usually people reach out wanting something. You know, they want something from someone when they reach out, if they're this TEDx speaker or this influencer or whatever, which is fine. But I can tell you that, you know, I love helping people. I absolutely love helping people. But when people message me and they tell me how I have impacted their life, like something that I have said or a show that I did, or maybe I replied to a comment in a way that really inspired them, and they message me what that did for them, I've got so many screenshots in my phone because I'm like, sometimes I need to go back to that. I need to go back to that and just remember these kinds of things. So don't ever be afraid to, you know, reach out to people, tell them you love them, tell them what they're doing for you. And just like that, you know, in the gym or wherever you're doing basketball, the best player, go up and say, what's up? You know, they'll make you better. Surround yourself with those better people. So some other, you know, when you're talking about your health in, you know, counting calories and things like that, how simple was that to integrate into life? I've tried that, you know, but now I just have someone that actually brings me 3 meals a day that I can, you know, use that way. How have you implemented that in your life?
For me, I've been working out. I'm 33. I've been working out since I was 16. So I've been working out for like 17 years. I don't know. Long before that people were talking about macros and tracking calories, for some reason I was just doing that. So it's always been, at this point, it's intuitive, where I can say like, all right, this is kind of what I ate for the day. Yeah, I'm either over, under, or right where I should be. At this point, it's unconscious. So I think that's the thing, right? Like, at this point, podcasting is fairly unconscious, where you and I are in flow. I don't know what time it is. I don't know really anything going on right now other than what's going on here. In the beginning, it was definitely more of a challenge because it takes conscious energy. This is what I'll say, though. There are so many apps now that make it unreasonably easy. If it's something you want to do, it's the lowest barrier to entry ever to try. It definitely will take conscious effort in the beginning, but I believe it will ultimately be very, very worth it in the long run for you.
Amen. Amen. And something that, you know, the first thing that I did for this type of, you know, focus in my life was I cut out certain things. I noticed things that, you know aren't good for me. You know, I know this isn't going to help me become the person that I want to become. Like December 31st of 2019, I decided no more soda, no more energy drinks, never going to have it again. Haven't had a sip of one since, you know, January 1st, 2020. And in that, you know, cutting things out, then we have to replace them with something, right? If we find things that aren't good for our life, if we're conscious of something that we have to take out of our life that would make us improve our overall well-being, you know, cutting that out is a decision that alters your mind. It alters your identity. It says, I'm not someone that eats McDonald's for breakfast every day. I'm not someone that drinks 3 Cokes a day. And when we cut that out, then who do we become? That's when we can start adding in these things, you know? And I remember the first time that I came and trained here, that's what made me change everything about my nutrition. I didn't go into the macros and start counting calories and things, but when I went and trained, I noticed that the way that my body felt as I was striking, as I was, you know, my conditioning was fine, but I could just tell, I could just sense that my nutrition was off. Because I work right here for a long time, and they have this service here called Rappi, where they'll just bring you food, you know, and whenever you want. It's like Uber Eats, except quicker and, you know, awesome and cheap. So I just was doing that. But then I made that decision when I felt that. I said, I don't want that. I am not doing that with my life. And the next day I found Comida Fit, which is like this place where it'll just bring you 3 meals that are for your body, for your goals every single morning, and then you just get to eat them. So I think it's just as powerful to cut things out as it is to add things in. Have you, when you were, growing this, when you went from, contemplating on the bed, were there any things that you had to cut out in that time in order to progress with the conscious self-improvement and focus on that?
Yeah, there were people, places, things, and ideas that I had to cut out. It's hard. I mean, that's the hardest part, right? Because you have to create a void for something better to fill it. So I had an addiction to porn. I had a pornography addiction for a while, like probably from, I don't know, 14 to 22. So like early in this journey, it was very much like, okay, well, I want to be the type of person who can help other people get over their struggles. I got to figure out a way to get through my own first. Yeah. So that's something that I had to cut out, which was very important for me. And a lot of it's like mindset stuff where I don't want to talk about somebody behind their back. Like, I don't want to be that. I want to be a virtuous human being who is bringing positivity into the world. And honestly, there were people I had to cut out. There were people who weren't necessarily good for me. I had this interesting thing where when you know what the right thing to do is, it's often hardest to do it, right? Like, it's the right thing. I had this, I call it a situationship. I was dating this young lady, and she ended up like falling for me harder than I fell for her. And I knew that. And it got to the point where I said, look, Kev, what you're doing right now, you're hurting somebody more than they need to be hurt. I would rather go be lonely and be single and be by myself than in any way, shape, or form lead this person on, even though I already told this person, but still. So that was one of those things where it's like, I'm not going to be the type of person who puts myself in situations like this. It's just not aligned for me. So yeah, I would say all of the things that I felt were really taking me out of alignment, or they weren't in alignment with my character. That was one of the biggest things. Was my business partner and I had some really hard conversations about, like, we don't talk like that. That's not how we talk. We don't say those things. We don't do that kind of thing. That the character part has been such a challenge. It's been a lot of mirrors and a lot of pain. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that.
Of course.
One of the, I just made a positive affirmations video for addicts in recovery, and it's actually releasing, by the time this airs, it would have released on the 30th of September. And one of the things that I say in there is, today, the decisions I make are in alignment with my beliefs and character. And if we're thinking about that, we're making decisions based on what we truly believe, then we're going to be acting the way that we want to act and be the person that is becoming who we're supposed to be. That's the whole point. Because if we have something happen and we react instead of respond, if we react in a way that isn't in alignment with who we are, then we're going to struggle with that later on that night. We're going to struggle with that decision later on that night. And I also wanted to go back and talk about something, right? Because it's not really talked about enough. And a lot of us overcame, drug addiction on this show, and, porn addiction and the benefits of getting over porn, and more science is coming out. We're trying to get out more and more. But do you remember specifically any benefits or anything that was holding you back because of that specific addiction that ended up going away when you got away from it?
Yeah, this is what happened. I was 22 years old in a relationship, and I had sexual dysfunction. And here I am, a 22-year-old man who is supposed to have the highest testosterone in his life. I'm supposed to be crushing it, and I'm having sexual dysfunction with my partner. That was this level of pain, shame that I did not know I could have. The pain became great enough for me to start doing research. And I started doing research on, what is this actually doing to my brain? Like, why is this happening to me? And then when my awareness was high enough, that's what happens, is you eventually get to the point where this isn't good for me. Yeah. I can't kid myself into thinking this is good for me anymore. And the excuse that everybody does it, I can't use that, because not everybody knows what I know now. So there was a lot of sexual dysfunction for sure. There was a lot of real life not seeming nearly as good as what I see when I'm on these websites. And then for me, when I stopped, everything over time, and it took a while, everything over time started going back to normal. And Adam, what happened one of the other things is when I was single, I had my own place and I was meeting people, and I never had any positive experiences because my body was so messed up. Yeah, it was like I'm a bachelor in this great place by myself, and I'm having all these people like come hang out with me. Nothing's happening because I can't do anything. That level of pain really forced me to say, look, you got to make a change, man. You got to make a change. And that was it for me.
Wow. I love that. And other than sexual dysfunction, right? What were you learning from the effects on the brain? Because I've done a lot of studies on this also. I have a friend that actually is a coach for helping men get over porn addiction.
Frank?
Yeah.
I know Frank. Frank's a good guy.
Yeah. He's a good friend.
It's a small world, Adam. It's a small world.
Amen. So what have you learned about the effects on the brain and what actually happens when you stop watching porn? For anyone out there that is watching it right now, listen.
Yeah, number one, it's not just about the pleasure that you're getting in the moment. It's messing up your brain chemistry when it comes to dopamine. It's giving you things that aren't real that are going to make you numb yourself and feel like your real life is dull. So it's quite literally changing your brain chemistry as well as your physiology, which all comes from your brain. So yeah, it's doing things to your brain it might actually take like years to reverse.
Yeah.
I don't remember the number, but it was something along the lines of if you've been watching it for 4 years, it could take like a year for you to actually get back to baseline physiology and dopamine levels. So yeah, it's even if you don't feel like you're addicted, just do some research and see if it changes the way you look at things. It's not something that's just pleasure and nothing comes of it.
Yeah. And if you're watching it and you don't consider yourself addicted, give it up for 30 days.
Yeah.
Give it up for 30 days. See if you can do that.
Yeah.
And it also, getting rid of it also increases your creativity. It increases your thought process when you're meeting someone, when you're talking to someone. You just cut it out. Just cut it out. It's really good for you.
Yeah.
And then you also started talking about, you don't want to be someone that talks behind people's backs, right? And I can't tell you, because I don't know how many times I have specifically had this conversation or talked about the fact that people gossip a lot, and when this happens, right? And I'm talking specifically about fellowships, 12-step fellowships, addiction fellowships. There's a lot of this like cliquey stuff sometimes. And a decision I made early on was if I'm in a circle of people and the conversation starts to talk about someone who isn't there, I would literally just turn around and walk away. It was a decision that I made. It also talks about in the Bible how, a gossip is like a choice morsel going down to the inner depths of your soul. So when you're listening to a gossip, when you're talking about gossip, talking about someone that isn't there, you're actually damaging your soul and your spirit by doing that. And why would you want to get rid of that? Why wouldn't you want to talk to somebody when they're not there? Why did you make that decision?
For me, it's very much like, it's just not a productive use of my time. And this is the other thing too. And really think about it. If you're in a group of 4 people and you're talking about the 5th person that's not there, don't you think they're probably talking about you when you're not there? And you just think you're the one that doesn't get talked about? It's one of those things where if you're hugging people who have mud on them, you're going to get mud on you. Yeah. And that's just the way it works. It just is that. I think another Jim Rohn quote was, when you lay down with dogs, you get fleas or something like that. I think that was a Jim Rohn quote. And that one's a little harsh, but yeah, it's from the aspect of, I'm not the person that you're not talking about. So why would I do that? Really, it's that. And the other thing too is, I think when you do talk about somebody behind their back, you can never talk to that person directly the same again, because subconsciously, there's stuff in there that you haven't told them. Now, this is my thing. If you're going to talk about somebody behind their back, just make sure you're willing to say the same thing to them.
Yeah.
If you're okay with that, if that's the type of person you are, where it's like, you know what? Yeah, I said that about Adam behind his back. I should probably go tell him that. Cool. I'm okay with that. But, I think that's an important part. And this is the other thing too. It's our job to help the people in our community, in our circle, right? So you have to be willing to tell them that stuff. So yeah.
Yes. 100%. And I love that you brought that point up, because I believe that any time that we're talking about or to someone else, if we can have the focus that every conversation we're having about or to someone else is to edify or build them up or correct them, That's the place that we want to come from. If we are noticing that we are having a conversation about someone with the intention of bringing them down, with the intention of saying, oh, they're doing this and they're doing this and they're so wrong and that kind of stuff, then it's going to tear them down, but it's also going to tear you down. Because then your mind is filled with them and all the negative stuff that they're doing, and then you're not doing anything about it. Complaining, from the essence of complaining, we complain because we feel like we're not going to do anything about it. Like, we can complain that, oh, he's doing so well in business, and, oh, he's so arrogant and he does this and that, and us complaining about that means that subconsciously we're not willing to do the work to do this. That's why we complain about it. And then if we are building people up and we're focusing on building people up, we will attract that into us as well. We'll attract the people that build us up, And so tell us about your, this podcast that is just killing it.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Yeah. Our podcast is Next Level University. Our jam, our brand is heart driven, but no BS, holistic self-improvement for dream chasers. So hopefully you've gotten the heart driven, but no BS. The heart driven is, I mean everything I say with so much love, from my heart. But the no BS side is, I can't lie to you. I mean, even the talking about the porn thing, it's like a lot of people would avoid that. I don't want to.
Yeah.
Will I look bad? Maybe, but I have to tell you what my experience was. That's just who I am. And we do 7 episodes a week on health, wealth, life, and love. A lot of people, and this is what I really enjoyed about this, Adam, you and I talked a lot about identity, right? We talked as much about identity and depth as what are the tactics, and that's what we talk about on the podcast. So all the major podcast platforms were there, and then all of our episodes are on YouTube as well, and that's our wonderful website, nextleveluniverse.com below. Thank you.
Awesome. And then how do you help people beyond the podcast episodes that you do? Do you do coaching? How do you help people?
Yeah, we have a ton of coaching. So we do one-on-one coaching as well as group coaching, retreats. We have free courses, very much like you, where we're trying to help people become more self-aware. So like, group coaching is a deep dive into who you are as a person. And then how does that actually change your behaviors? And then how can you actually get clear and succeed through consistency? So all of our coaching is very much in alignment with what we talk about on the podcast. Understanding yourself at a deeper level really is the key to so much of the roadblocks that we have in our lives.
Amen. I love it so much. And brother, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
This was an awesome conversation. I'm going to play the commercial as we exit, so that everybody knows about what's going on with Recovered on Purpose, and then stay in here after the episode so we can have a quick chat. All right. What's up, Recovered on Purpose family? I hope you're enjoying this episode as much as I do when I'm making them. Guys, if you're getting any value from this, if you're seeing any golden nuggets that you want to share with your community, make sure that you are. You're sharing it with your groups, you're sharing it with your personal page or your pages, or to that one person that you're thinking of right now in their messengers so that they get this message. And guys, the brand new Recovered on Purpose website is up, and it has a whole bunch of different merchandise and resources and the free calls with me. So make sure you're checking out recoveredonpurpose.com after the show. And if you are a loved one of an addict, if you have a kid that's suffering an addiction, I'm now doing free calls so we can